like right now? Can you become aware at this moment that there is a presence there, that you are awake, that there is an underlying presence, even when you're not thinking, without which you couldn't exist? There's an underlying aliveness, a presence, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to think to know that. In fact, it's only when there is a gap between two thoughts you become aware that you haven't disappeared, or that you don't remember your personal history. You don't even, at this moment, you don't even remember your name, you don't need it. But there is an essential aliveness or presence there, and that is the eye of wisdom that suddenly arises. Knowing yourself as that. You could also say what's left of you when you stop thinking. Now you can't think about that. The usual tendency when I ask a question like that seems difficult to comprehend is you start thinking about it. So when I ask what's left when you stop thinking, then you might say, oh, I have to think about that. But that's never the answer. So there is that which has assumed form in you, which is the person with its history, and there is that which is timeless and formless, that underlies it all, that is actually the essence of your sense of identity, Atman, and that is self-realization. It says here, to obtain this eye of wisdom, you must do two things: surrender your ego and purify your mind. And that is done, I would say, by realizing that you are not your mind. Because if you're identified with every thought that comes into your head, as many humans still are, then basically you are your mind, and beyond the thoughts that go through your head, there is nothing else. That's all you know. And the thoughts that go through your head are conditioned by your upbringing, by your past, by your environment, the country you live in, the time period you live in, your family background. All those things determine what kind of thoughts go through your head, and all those thoughts that go through your head habitually make up who you consider yourself to be. That's a certain story arises in the mind, and that becomes the mind-made self. And that is the reality for most humans. And it's also a fact that for most humans that is a very limited reality. They don't realize how limited their worldview is, how limited all their opinions are. They don't realize that they're inhabiting these little prisons in their minds. That's their reality. And when you're totally trapped in your mind, then you create a lot of conflict, because then all the other minds become like enemies to you. And then you can become an extremist, whether political or religious, or you just have a lot of conflict in your personal life. You're just totally stuck in your head. Cannot recognize your connectedness with nature, your connectedness with other human beings. You're cut off by concepts, by thoughts. And so that's most people's reality. And spiritual awakening is realizing that there is a dimension in you that is far deeper than that. And that here, according to the ancient teachings, it's Atma, which is the God within, the divine within, whatever you want to call it. And that's a liberation. That's even just having glimpses of that is liberating, that there's more to you than the little person that before was running your life. And with that, an intelligence comes into your life that is greater than the intelligence of your conditioned mind. And that's what all spiritual teachings are about. I'd like to read now a poetic passage where the timeless one, consciousness, talks about itself. And you really have to look at this as a kind of poem rather than philosophy or anything like that. It's quite inspiring. I am pure consciousness, the underlying essence of all elements and beings. Nothing whatsoever exists separate from my divinity. There's no power in the cosmos that does not emanate from me and belong to me. The entire universe is suspended from me as if I wear the string in a necklace of jewels. The gems may differ vastly, but the force holding them all together, the central thread, is me, divinity. I am the innate nature of everything. In pure water, I am the sweet taste. In the sun and moon, I am the radiance. In the very center of human beings, I live as virility and courage. I am the sacred word Om, which designates the divine, and I am the sound of it heard throughout the universe. I am the slight, delicate scent, the sweet fragrance of the earth. I am the brilliance in both fire and sun. I am the light of divinity in all beings. I am the subtle spirit in spiritual practices that gives them their existence. I am the love in the devotee, the austerity in the ascetic, or the sweet sense of charity in the giver. I am the primordial seed of all entities, the power of discrimination in those who are intelligent, the splendor within all resplendent beings and things. Of the strong, I am their might and vigor. As I am beyond all attachments, I am the power in unselfish desire. I am the subtle force in good actions that puts them in harmony with the welfare of humanity. I am the innate urge to help others. So this is a beautiful poem. And as you listen to something like that, or if you go back and get the book and read it, it's essential and it really works for you when you not just read it or listen to it with your mind, but you can actually sense something. When, for example, as this talks about the I am this and that, if you can feel, if you can sense the inherent I am that you are, then it's not just an external scripture anymore. Then the external scripture has become a pointer that actually works, that points you back to your very source. And then you can go around and you can look at all the life forms in this world and sensing your inherent oneness with them. You see, you look at the flower suddenly. Of course, there's that one consciousness has given birth to this life form. It's real. And you can sense an aliveness within you as you look at that, an aliveness that has nothing to do with who you are as a person. There is an aware presence there, which is especially noticeable if you don't label the flower mentally, just look at it. Don't have to call it anything. What a lovely flower. You don't need it. Well, if that thought arises, it's fine, but then you can drop it and look. And what's there when you look at a flower? There's the looking, there's the color, there's the shape, there's the scent or fragrance, perhaps. You can even touch it. And what else is there when you look at a flower? And you're not calling it anything, you're just looking and smelling, perhaps. Is there anything else there then at that moment? Yes, there is the presence that makes the looking and the perception of the flower possible. There is the consciousness, the light of consciousness in which this perception arises. That is in you, the divine, the unmanifested, recognizing itself in the manifested, and seeing that the essence of the flower, sensing that the essence of the flower is one with your own essence. And then you feel a connectedness that wasn't there before when you had ideas about the flower, when you were talking about the flower, thinking about it or learning facts about it. That may have its place, but if that takes up all your attention, then you live in a very limited world. So beyond thinking about things and talking about it and labeling it and judging it, make sure there is another dimension in you present and consciously present, where you can sense that there is a presence in you that makes all this possible. Would there even be a flower if you were not perceiving that flower? If there was no perceiving entity here, what would there be, what we call flower here? Well, a physicist would, of course, say, well, it's a conglomeration of atoms and molecules. They're dancing around for a while until they separate and go their separate ways. It's not a flower. There's a dance of atoms and molecules. But somehow the flower is born with the act of perception. And the act of perception is only possible because there's a consciousness there underlying it. And you are that consciousness beyond your personal history. On a much more fundamental level, you are the consciousness of the universe. That's what the entire Bhagavad Gita is really about. When you realize that, you don't need any scriptures anymore, but you might still enjoy them. Often people make scriptures into gods. They just, this is it. So you externalize again. Of course, it's only a map or a pointer or signpost. You are the consciousness of the universe, and you can sense that. There's something deeper in you than the person. Not separate from it. The person has come out of it. One could almost say, let's say, you are the ocean, and the person is the ripple on the surface of the ocean that appears there very briefly. Now the ripple that only knows itself as the ripple, or a little wave, let's say. If you're a big guy, a VIP, you're a wave. If you're a normal person, you're a ripple. But a wave or ripple, they don't survive for that long. No wave or ripple survives for that long, and then it's gone. If the ripple on the surface of the water, let's say, that has a certain amount of consciousness, if it only knows itself as a ripple, that's a very limited view of itself, because really it is the ocean expressing itself temporarily as the ripple. So if the ripple could realize that it's the ocean in addition to being a temporary ripple, that would add an enormous dimension to its life that it was ignorant of before. If you're just a ripple and all surrounded by all these other ripples, but threatening, it's scary. So you are that. Another analogy we could use, a ray of sunlight. You could say that you are a ray of sunlight, and the ray of sunlight for God, where it came from, and where it continues to come from, and what it is connected to, and ultimately what it is one with, because the sunlight that comes from the sun is not separate from the sun, it really is an extension of the sun. So when you feel the sunlight on your skin, it's an extension of the sun. If this ray of sunlight couldn't feel anymore its connectedness to the sun, then again existence would become very limited. So the ray of sunlight needs to suddenly go within and say, oh, I can now feel that I'm connected to this vast thing, and I'm just a temporary expression of this vastness. And suddenly you have a trust in life because you are the vastness, and an enormous trust comes in. What is trust? Which in some religious traditions is called faith, but I would prefer to use the word trust, because that's really what faith is. But not trust in some abstract idea, but trust in something that you are being carried. You're one with something vast, and you are essentially it. And what is trust? It's the end of fear. Until you feel the depth of you, that there's more to you than you thought there was, there must be fear. You can't really have trust in life if you cannot feel the life, the true life within you. So fear goes as you become still and as you become present, and you realize the most essential thing about you is consciousness. You are conscious, the light of consciousness. And very much a secondary thing is the person that's the ripple. So there are two ways of looking at a flower. You can look at a flower as a person and through the eyes of a person, in which case you say, what a nice flower, I'd like to give that to my mum on Mother's Day, I will order it tomorrow, whenever it is. Or, why don't you, I'd like to cut those flowers and take them home, or put them, they would look good on my living room table, or whatever else. Or you say, oh, this is called such and such in Latin, I know its name, and know all kinds of things about it. That's one way, that's fine. That's one way of looking at the flower. Then you look at the flower as a person. And for flower you can take anything else, another human being, anything. And another way of looking at the flower is to just look and be alert and present as you look, without any label, and sense the alertness in the background of the looking. then suddenly there's a depth there. And then more and more you function, in this dance between being a person, looking through the eyes of the person, but not anymore completely losing yourself as being in this personal sense of self. Yes, still occasionally applying it still occasionally operates in you, it has its place, labeling things has its place, sometimes you need it, but not again losing yourself in all the thoughts that come, this, that, always having access to the spaciousness that's deeper than the person. And then the life becomes quite wondrous. You look around, but in a fresh, new way. It's always fresh and new. And the world is then alive again. The more you get trapped in concepts, the less alive the universe is. Because then the concepts are old. I've seen it all and done it all. Then they don't look anymore. And of course, then you know it all, it's even worse. Opinions, trapped in opinions. Now, here's an interesting little paragraph on the Bhagavad Gita. What kind of people become spiritual seekers? And it divides into, there are four types of persons, according to here, and this still applies very much nowadays, and this was 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. There are four different types of persons who seek spirituality or God. So Krishna talks again as the personification of the One. Four types of people seek a connection with me. One, the world-weary, people who worship God for the alleviation of physical or mental agony, or to be released from fears and adversity. There's many people, of course, who come to a spiritual teacher or teaching or a spiritual book, come for that reason, and it is a good reason to want to be free of suffering. And of course, the whole Buddha's teaching is about freedom from suffering, so that's one type.